than I initially thought. So I appreciate you guys taking the time out of your day.
Yeah.
So this is working with a producer. It's turned out to be a series within a series. If you have missed some of our videos, you can jump on to the Facebook page, 79's Facebook page, and click on videos, and they're all archived there. Got a lot of cool information. Today, I'm really pleased that this came together. We've got Jack Nolan, who's an artist from Australia that we just got done working with, and we got Justin Weaver, who produced and played on the record, and I'm Chris Mara. I engineered it and recorded it at Welcome to 1979. Why don't you guys introduce yourselves and tell a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll kind of talk about how we all got together. So, Jack, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for doing this. And yeah, I'm Jack Nolan. I'm a singer-songwriter based in Sydney. Been around for a long time. Independent, fully independent, should be said. And with a worldwide distribution deal. But yeah, I've been writing music since my early 20s and releasing it since my late 20s. And being a family man, also in and out of the industry in terms of having to bring up a family and support my kids. They're all older now, and in the last, I'd say 5 years, I've really directed my life to writing. And over the years, I've worked with some great musicians, some well-known musicians. I was in a band called the Kelly Gang with some guys about 10 years ago. That was much more of a rock thing. And we did shows around Sydney and up the east coast of Australia, which was great fun. But my main love is, my go-to is writing. And I'm back into it now, full-time per se. And I've had 2 experiences in Nashville. This last one with you guys was the most recent, which was when was that? March last month. Mm-hmm. I returned back to Australia just before coronavirus, and out of that, we've got a great record to release soon. So I think that's probably enough from me. Let's hear from Justin.
Yeah, Justin, what's your deal? Oh, hang on. Sorry. All right, go ahead. I had you muted. Sorry.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Chris. Thanks for turning me on. Cheers, fellas. Cheers, everybody watching. I'm Justin Weaver, Nashville guitar player / producer. I've been working here since mid-90s. I've always been a guitar slinger for hire for a long time, and I've always produced records as well. Yeah, man, I don't know. It's to actually give my biography sounds kind of weird, but I play for a lot of country artists, rock and roll artists, made a lot of records, both the Americana genre, also straight ahead rock genre, and country as well. So I kind of, this town kind of, you kind of cross all those genres if you're going to live here and work here. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Cool. Yeah, and this is a little awkward because Justin lives about 4 blocks from me.
Hey, Chris.
Basically.
Yeah, we're down the street.
Yeah.
Not so much.
Right, Jackson, Australia. So, and this is what's great about technology, and learning new technology and all of this. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Chris Mara. I'm an engineer, and I'm Welcome to 1979. It's a studio here in Nashville. And I guess before we get started, I've been sitting in the same chair a lot. I dropped my pencil earlier, and I reached under my recliner and found this. So, question for you guys. So we have some choices before we get started. I got these glasses. Okay. All right. So one, I got these, which I use.
Whoa, yeah.
These are what I use for tech work on tape machines. I got these, which I only use when I'm alone mixing.
Oh.
Because they're really fun.
Yeah.
Or I got kind of the standard ones. Which ones do you guys want me to use for this?
You're kind of like an emoji.
Basically, yeah.
Well, those ones, these ones you have on now, Chris, are too much like these.
Okay. So I got the blue
I
one.
like the
I go
first
the
one,
first
Justin.
ones. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
go the first ones. I mean, I
All
kinda like the big windshields, but if you want to go for the first ones, I can go with that.
All right, cool. We'll go with these then. Awesome. So, you know, like I said earlier, we've been featuring a lot of different types of producers, and you know, speaking to the artists, and just so anyone watching right now, just jump in with a Q&A or anything like that whenever you want. You know, the thing I talk a lot with artists is they may have a mental snapshot of what a producer does, and what I really want to do with this episode, this series, is explain all the different ways producers can work with artists, and that may change from song to song. You know, so Justin, you want to talk a little bit about how you produce, and then Jack will talk with you about what you wanted out of a producer and kind of how you guys talked about this. I'm assuming prior to even going in the studio. So, Justin, kind of talk with me about how you produce and how you like to work.
Well, you know, first it really begins with the song. The songs need to be together, right? With Jack, was fortunate. You know, he spent a lot of time crafting these songs, and he had them well thought out, and what he wanted to get from them. And it was the two of us basically having discussions over the phone multiple times, making sure, you know, we didn't know each other. We'd never met before. And so we were trying to establish a common ground sonically in what we were trying to achieve. So for me, I like to speak in sonic terms. I have my favorite records, right? We all have our favorites. And, you know, I study records, I study sounds, I study the way they play songs, I study that probably more than anything, and how songs can fit into those different sonic structures. And so with Jack, we had some common records between us that we shared and we both appreciated. So we knew we had these benchmarks that we were going to aim for. And so as he started sending me songs, now we talked about that, but I hadn't heard any of his songs, and I didn't know Jack. You know, we met through a mutual friend. And so when he started sending me songs and I started hearing what he was writing, I got inspired. And then I started having ideas. Okay, here's maybe how we might want to go about recording this in a live situation, the players that might be most appropriate to carry that out. And most importantly, the space we were going to do it. You know, Nashville has scads of studios that are available. But from the first, I go on gut instinct. And so from the first conversation we had, Chris, your place was at the top of my list just because that was my gut feeling.
Mm-hmm.
What I learned from working with Jack is he's also a gut feeling person. You know, if it's good in the music industry, I don't want to say the word industry. It's good when you're working with music to follow your gut, because that always will tell you the right decisions that you need to make. When you start using your head too much, you get confused and you might not do something that is representative of yourself. You might get lost in the woods. So my gut said, I think 1979 is a good place. And I would talk to Jack and we communicate about that, but he had to be comfortable as well. He's the artist coming across, you know, the ocean to make this record. And so there was a lot of times that just needed to let it sit for a bit and make sure we were making the right decision, that he was comfortable, that I was comfortable. That's a pretty natural progression. And the main thing was getting those songs, hearing those songs, and how they could play into the sonic structure that we talked about. So that's usually how I will begin any project. It's always songs first. Let's talk about records that we really dig. We like the sounds, or we like the vocal, or we like the presentation, or we like, it can be a myriad of different things.
So what I'm hearing you say is you talk about the songs and the records you like, and that will kind of unfold. Like, how were those records made?
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then that kind of just, the layers start kind of peeling back. Right.
Right.
And discussing each step as you go along and deciding things well in advance. Right.
Yes.
So Okay, cool. Cool. And Jack, kind of talk with me about, your journey into this record and what you were looking for in a producer engineer team, all that kind of stuff. Because I'm always curious about that. And this is a great way for me to ask questions I wouldn't normally ask in the studio. So,
Sure, sure. Well, interestingly, I've recorded, I think, 5 LPs and a couple of EPs. I've also been lucky previously, some years ago, of having quite a lot of experience recording on tape. But interestingly, so I know the studio space quite well. I know it well. But I'd never worked with a producer per se. So my experience has always been having songs ready, working with musicians that have had a lot more experience, particularly older guys than me, might have been in international acts and had a lot of time in the studio, and basically produced the stuff myself. So I'd never actually let go, so to speak, and handed a project over to a producer. But having said that, I never felt with Justin that I let go and handed over. It was very much a collaborative thing. And I think the thing that I like talking about with writing and with producing music is the idea of risk. And I think as an artist, a lot of what I've done anyway has involved a lot of risk and taking a chance. I was in a position where I'd been in Nashville and knew how I'd had a glimpse. I'd started a record in Sydney a couple of years ago and finished and mixed it in Nashville, which was a great experience. And I thought the sounds that we got in Nashville and the way that it all worked had been a real positive for me. So I felt as though if I was going to go and do it, but I'm very keen to come back to Tennessee and do it. And then from there, it was all just about taking a bit of a chance. The friend that Justin referred to was a guy called Travis New, who's a friend of mine in Sydney. He'd lived in Nashville. And Trav and I had done some work together and performed together. He performed with me in a duo and a couple of times as a trio. And we were working together in doing more live stuff of my songs. And Travis is a real pro. And I found every time I had any dealings, and I still have dealings with Trav to this day, it was always, everything was smooth, on time and professional. And I really liked him and I really like and trust Travis. And the conversation was, I'm going to do another record. I really think I'd like to do it in Nashville again. And he mentioned Justin. And because of my respect for Trav, I felt, well, let's reach out to Justin. And from there, from the very first conversation, and I'd be saying to all artists, like it felt good. We discussed the same records. Justin, I made it very clear that the sounds that I was looking for, I'd sent Justin reference tracks from the last record and previous records before, so he had an idea of where I was coming from, but more importantly, where I wanted to go. And it just felt good, And the other thing too is, no conversation was, the conversations were long. And it just felt like a really good fit, and we spoke the same language about where I was heading. Mm-hmm. And I'd also say, for me, what was really important was having those templates. So having those 3 or 4 records, and to be able to say these are the records I love, and I really feel some of these songs anyway we could start developing a strategy around some of these kind of sounds. I mean, you never come up with I don't think you ever come up with a record that sounds like those templates, but it's a good touchstone, and that was important. So it was just, and even getting on the airplane to go to Nashville was a risk. But I think as an artist, that's I suppose life's a bit like that. You've just got to go with it. And as Justin said, I study music and sounds probably a lot differently to Justin, but I'm also a gut person, and it all felt right. So I rolled the dice and headed over, and it worked out, I think, very well, actually.
Yeah, and we're going to play some of the songs too. And Jack has been so kind to let us play a demo and then the final product too. So we can talk about music all day, but it's fun to listen to it too, right? and then just to be clear, so Jack, you're the artist, and this is your record. This isn't like a label didn't hire Justin to make a record for them. You hired Justin to make a record for you, right? And that, I mean, that's why you're involved, and that's why everything was talked about and honed and evaluated that way, right?
Yeah, like I didn't turn up. I didn't turn up to Nashville last month with no idea. I was very clear on where we were going, and I think Justin was very clear on what we were trying to achieve. But you can never, like any art, you can never tell what the outcome is going to be. You've just got to go in with your best intentions and trust. And the other thing too is Justin. I've been working over the years with the same guys in Sydney, and a big thing too is I came over to work with guys I'd never met, and the team that was assembled was another important thing too, which I had no idea about till I got there, but that turned out to be fantastic as well.
I'm going to pause for a question.
Not to mention the studio. I should come back to what Justin said too about Welcome to 1979. When he mentioned a few studios when we were in deep discussion, I've got to tell you the name of the studio was Hook to start with. I love that, and started thinking about some of those great albums from virtually 1979, which I love. And then I checked you out and really felt it looked really great, really organic, best of the old, best of the new sort of thing. So I felt comfortable with that recommendation as well. So that was obviously.
Yeah, so it sounds like you talked to Justin about, the record you liked, and then that led him down to these are the players we're going to talk about having, like tools in your toolbox, and say it could be this drummer or this bass player or this studio, and then you get to kind of craft this relationship, right? Which I think is great. We're going to pause for a couple quick questions. Chevis wants to know if we can send back the actual reels of tape if requested. Yes, of course. I mean, from the studio standpoint, we can record all different kinds of ways and in different studios. Justin and I.
Wow.
Where is he gone?
Moderator.
Justin, take over. Answer that question.
Oh, he's
Justin.
coming back. Chris is coming back. He's back.
Everybody's on the internet today, evidently.
We were panicking.
Yeah. Never panic. So yeah, we can send your reels back to you. You can come in with reels, whatever. We got Travis. I think is this who you're talking about?
Yeah, that's Travis.
So rare to see Justin in Facebook land. Yeah.
Very rare.
We had to coordinate this quite close. So and Stefan says hi from Romania. This is awesome. We're getting people from all over the place. So and Gary is an awesome educator out of St. Louis who looks like he's playing it safe. So awesome. Gary hosts started a really cool event in St. Louis with students and teaching them about all this kind of stuff. So it's honored that he's taken time out of his day to watch this. Well, so let's talk a little bit about the pre-production process, because you guys didn't just show up, shake hands, start playing songs, and dive in, right? Jack, you were sending Justin songs. Let's talk a little bit about that back and forth, because we're talking Australia at Nashville, right?
Yeah.
So,
to me or to Justin?
Well, how did it work? I mean, so once you said, okay, Justin, I think we should start working together. You sent songs, and this is a genuine question. I have an idea how this all worked, but why don't you just kind of walk us through that?
Yeah, sure. Well, okay, sure. Well, initially, and I'd recommend to any artist not to get too caught up in providing anything too tricky. I was going to go and record some of these songs because I had a Pro Tools set up at home, an M-Box, just a basic Pro Tools setup. And I've discovered as an artist that I'm a songwriter, not an engineer, and I'd spend hours trying to mic things up. So in the end, I end up with a friend just recording acoustic songs. But Justin was pretty keen on me just sending voice memos.
Okay.
So I kind of went with that, and that's how we started. I'd be wherever I was, I'd put the phone on the table, prepare if I felt the song was ready, I'd send Justin a version. Some of them had my partner in the background with the hairdryer going. Some of them had, you know, dogs barking, but he got the version of the song that I felt was finished as simply a voice memo. I didn't worry too much about how my singing was on that particular time. I just made sure that what he was receiving was what I thought, was what I was sure was at that time the structure of the song, because I'm all about structure. So all the songs that Justin got, I considered finished at the time. So I'm not sure what other artists do with producing, but I felt they were ready to record. Now, there was changes that we made on the run in the studio. There were changes that Justin felt strongly about that we worked through and changed in the studio. Subtle stuff around bridges and things like that. But in general, the songs were provided to Justin as a voice memo, and that's pretty much, Juzzy, that's the only way you really wanted them, as I recall.
Yeah. Well, you know, depending on the style of record, but for your record being a song based record, I find that voice memos work better than even a semi produced, or not produced but more band oriented demo, because what happens is you get married to ideas. So when you first record something, it might be really inspired, right? But it's just not. Even though it might be really inspired, it's not recorded appropriately, and then you end up never getting back to that. When you go to try at the studio, when you go to actually make the record, you're always putting it up against that first inspired moment. And some people have a hard time letting go of, you know, their preconceived notion of the song. And so I like to have the voice memo. It makes it easier for everybody involved, going like, okay, here's the basic thing, what we're starting with. And in Jack's case, he's a solo artist, so we're bringing in side guys, and I hate to give those guys too much direction right at the beginning, because you might stifle one of the greatest creative points of the song. You know, so they might come up with a part, and more often than not, they'll come up with a part that's like really great because you didn't coach them. You know, I don't like to coach with exact parts. I like to go, think in this color, you know, think that this type of feel maybe, and see what happens, and then let them go. I figure if you dictate it too much, you ruin the creative process.
Yeah, and that, you know, there are a lot of different producers that work like that. You know, they'll hire players, and I've even worked with producers that show up and hand the guitar player the guitar they want them to play and tell them what to play, and that's all fine and well. But it sounds like you kind of go, okay, Jack, that record you're talking about on this song, this type of drummer played on it.
That's right.
You know, and hire that type of drummer. And you cast this quite well, I think, Justin. You had a couple drummers come in, and
oh yeah, I see it happens.
There's one
of them on here by chance.
One is
very.
I think one is now getting revenge and telling us what to do.
Yeah. Some drummers are louder than others.
Yeah. So Cactus was a big part of this. And it was awesome.
He was.
And then that's a big part of, you know, like, you know, Jack listens to a record. Just stop me if I'm wrong, but Jack, just as an artist, listens to music and has life experiences and knows how to get that out into the world, and then talks to someone like Justin. You say, well, to do it on musically, it's this person. That's and right. Then when you guys talking to an engineer like me, you say it's this record, this singer, I know what microphone to use. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then it all starts kind of coming together, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's a knowledge base. You're accessing the best of each person that's involved, right? So, and we all are reaching like, hey, this is our kind of goal, which you, like Jack hinted at earlier, you never really end up making the same record. You might have 5 records that you love that you talk about, and they're the benchmarks, but just trying to hit them, you'll make something different, you know, that you enjoy. You know, it's not like you're recreating a record. You're just using the inspiration of records that you've always loved. For me, like, you know, going back to the drummer who's commenting over here on the side quite a bit, Cactus Mosier, he came in and was like a big shot. It was a shot in the arm, that was great in the session because the way we tracked that week, we had Jimmy Paxson, playing, and then all of a sudden, we had tracked a group of songs, and I had Jimmy playing. He'd play a drum pass and then come back and play another drum pass. So a lot of this record's got double drums. There's Jimmy.
Yeah.
And so he'd be playing to himself. Well, I wanted to have Cactus involved, and his schedule was pretty busy at the time, but he ended up having a day where he could come in. So he walked in, and we already had 2 drum sets set up separately, and he was able to step in and then both of them playing at the same time. There's nothing quite as exciting as getting 2 drummers that know how to play at the same time together. That's a trick, and those guys do. And man, that was a treat on the 2 songs that they did that on.
Yeah, that was fun. And from my perspective too, Jack and Justin had conversations about drum sounds and challenged me to use my studio, which I've had for 12 years, in a way I've never used it before.
Yeah.
And which is awesome. We've got some questions from Jack Nolan.
That Jack Nolan, I'm happy to say, is related to me.
Oh, really?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. He is the Jack Nolan. I should qualify that I'm a John. I'm a Johnny. That has Jack as a stage name. But the Jack Nolan is a beautiful 27-year-old young man.
Okay.
And so they're genuine questions.
Those are good ones.
Okay. I was having a little bit of like a mental crack when I saw that come in. So Jack, what records did you use for the blueprint or reference point for this record? It's a great question.
It is a good question. Well, Justin and I spoke a lot about Wrecking Ball, which Daniel Lanois' Wrecking Ball, and Time Out of Mind, Bob Dylan. I think they were the 2 big reference points. Spoke quite a bit about Jack White, but that's a lot more rock. I think Wrecking Ball to me is a masterpiece. Not to mention the singer. I mean, you're never going to reach those heights. I don't think. She's in a class of her own. But the sonics on that record were beautiful, and the vocal sound, which I should credit you for, Chris. One thing that I'm hearing on these masters, I love the vocal sound, and I think it's the best vocal sound I've ever had. So that's down to you. And we spoke a lot about that vocal sound, and there was a number of records that we spoke about in terms of what we were trying to achieve with the vocal sound. But certainly the space, and I love mystery and trippiness in music. And I suppose there's always been an element in a lot of my songs of tension, and I wanted to keep that. So they were probably the 2 main talking points that we spoke about, and then we developed a process from there. But I mean, you listen to the masters so far, and like Justin mentioned, and I mentioned before that, there's hints of it. Really, they're just reference points, really, I'd say, Justin, wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that was our direction. Those records, especially, well, there's a couple of reasons why all this went hand in hand. Those records are tape-based records.
Yeah.
Those records weren't made in the box, and they were able to achieve those sounds using tape. And I studied those records. I mean, when I say studied, I've listened to those 2 records, Emmylou Harris's Wrecking Ball, Bob Dylan's Time Out of Mind, thousands of times on the headphones. I mean, those are like, it was like bread to me when I was younger, and on headphones and just sit and take it in, and I'd research. It's hard to find information on those records. You can find more information these days when people make records because it's more available. But when you're dealing with stuff that was made, pre the YouTube age, it's hard to find much. And so I'd like scour, any information I could get on those, and to know how they made those, and do my best to try and achieve those results with my knowledge. And then you, Chris, and we talked, before Jack came over, we had a number of conversations on the direction we were going to go sonically, and a big part of it for me was musicians playing together in a room, not a lot of isolation. So I wanted minimal drum miking. I didn't want a lot of engineering on the drums. I wanted those to be really organic. And obviously the vocal sound was a huge thing. I think that we reverse engineered this whole process in the fact that instead of typically on a session or a live gig, you start with the drum sound first, right? That's typically where it's based. You base everything around the kick. I wanted to get rid of that paradigm and start with the vocal. Like a Sinatra record, they'd set that vocal mic up and they would start with that. And then everything else was added around. So Chris was willing to jump in that wholeheartedly. And so we started with the vocal sound. And we didn't want the pretty normal, not that it's not pretty, but the normal, big tube condenser mic sound. We wanted something gritty and textural, and we wanted it to be the focus and very wide and big and what would carry the record. Everything else needed to fall around that. The drums needed to fall on the sides of it, and the guitars and so forth.
Yeah. Well, let's listen to one. You want to, we were talking kind of during the project about the song Gabriel, where Jack, you had played it a certain way, and then talk to us about that a little bit, because there's two songs we can play, and they both kind of pulled from each other, So walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. Well, Gabriel, you had a photo up there before of Jimmy's kit. At the front of that photo was a shot of the trash can, which was a great sound on the song Gabriel as we did it, but which was interesting just down here.
Oh, yeah.
Gabriel is an interesting story. That was a demo I did probably 4 years ago. And I went to a friend's place and recorded the whole thing myself. And I'm not a percussionist. I did the backing vocals myself. I did the guitar part, which exactly as I'd written it, and put all the harmonies on myself. And strangely enough, that demo, the people that heard it thought it was a great song, and there was something about it, but because of the way it was written and because of the fact that I was trying to be all things on the guitar when I was putting it down, it sort of chopped around the place a bit and had different time signatures and things like that. So when we went to the studio in Sydney a couple of years ago to do the last record that I did, it was on the table to record, but we couldn't find the right spot for it. And I didn't want to wait. I thought, well, I'll leave it now and leave it for another time, because there was arguments. There was a big, I won't, unless you want me to. There was a big issue around the song because it's written, where are we? Up on the 12th fret. I don't know how well you can hear that, Chris, but that's like an open B chord. And I've spent, as a songwriter, and some songwriters might be interested in this, and I'm sure they'll relate. Songwriter, I can hang around chords for years, and that's like an open B chord up on the 7th fret. And the song was written up there with down to the open F sharp major. And in recording that, the first time around, we had so much noise on the strings, everybody was saying, no, it's too noisy. So to counteract that, and we didn't record it, and it didn't work. We couldn't get the right feel. So I left it because I felt strongly about the song. And I thought, I don't want to just, record it and then let it go. So leaving those sessions and coming away and knowing that I had that screeching on the strings, which it turns out doesn't really matter in a band situation, I created that. Now that's a capo, obviously, and I took the end off it so that I am only capoing 4 strings. And I got that same B down there in what I call country corner. And I took that to Nashville thinking that when we do it, I'll use that capo, and there'll be no string noise, and that was my plan. Not only that, through that capo, having lived up on the 7th fret with the B, since then I've been living down in Country Corner with the capo, and out of that came another couple of, I think, great songs that we recorded together. One of them, Chit Chatter, and the other one, A Fool Would Follow Me, which are both on the record. So got to Nashville, sat down to record it, hadn't even thought about the old pattern up on the 7th fret, and Justin said, no way, you've got to record it the way you wrote it. And it hadn't occurred to me, and I think that's one of the subtle things that came out of Gabrielle, the fact that Justin was clued up to the fact that, and he'd heard the demo, he knew that we should do it the way it was written. So straight away we went back to the 7th fret. You don't really hear any noise between the 2nd and the 7th fret, and that's probably why the song works so well. And I think that going back that way, and I think that's why it was great. It might sound so obvious to go back to the way it was written, but as an artist, you get caught up in a writer, you get caught up and you get locked into changes. And I just came over there thinking, I'll just put the capo on. So that was really exciting for me, because I think Gabrielle is a great, the new Gabrielle, finished Gabrielle we all did together, is a great representation of that demo. And the other great thing is that, out of that experiment with that capo came another couple of great songs. So for me as a writer, and as I say, writers might be, I'm sure writers would relate, a lot of what I do is just fiddling around and playing stuff while I'm doing other stuff and being taken by sounds. And that capo has been fantastic for me. And I use it up and down the neck using 2 capos now. So it's opened a lot of doors, and I didn't even use it for the song. So did that make sense?
Yeah. So that's interesting. So what Justin did as a producer for this song was say to you, play it like you used to play it.
That's right.
Okay, because I think a lot of people might interpret what a producer does is just change things for the sake of changing it, and that's not what happened here at all. Well, let's listen a little bit. Talking about music is like dancing with architecture. So I've got the demo to play a little bit. That's not my quote, but I like it. If you're gonna steal something good, right? So give me a second. I'm gonna mute you guys while we play it, so it sounds really good for people listening. And we'll just play this thing a little bit. This is the demo that you had already. Anything?
No. Sounds great.
Sounds great. Why it's not working?
There it goes.
Okay, good. All right.
Well, I heard it through your speakers.
Yeah. You might.
Stars, you found a way into the backseat of my wheels. And you leaned over, you leaned forward, you whispered lies. I said, Lord, is this truth? Is this fiction? Is this real? Gabriel, oh Gabriel, can you tell me all is well? Can you tell me, Gabriel? And so we drove into dust, into wind, into rust. Is this real? Is this happening? Is this a dream? And we pulled over.
Cool. You guys should be hearing this. Sorry, I did get booted out.
I think the audience is hearing it, Chris, but we're
Correct.
not.
Yeah, Claudia let us know if she's hearing it. I got booted out a minute ago. I might have jacked some stuff around, but we will play now. If I have you guys unmuted, we'll hear it through your speakers.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of weird. So but let's listen to the one we did in the studio then.
Okay.
And so I'm gonna mute you guys. Sorry, stand by.
Endless lanes, endless cars. In the absence of stars, you found a way to the backseat of my wheels. And you leaned over, you leaned forward, you whispered lies. I said, Lord, is this truth? Is this fiction? Is this real? Gabriel, Gabriel, can you tell me all is well? Can you tell me, Gabriel? And so we drove into dust, into wind, into rust.
So like Justin was saying, that the vocal is what we built the drums around. The drums came in as banjo, banjo, and there you go. But the vibe of the song was really taken. Now I kind of understand what conversation about the capo, because that would have really changed how the chords felt, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing that you'll find when recording, the perfect way is not always the best. Although he had prevented squeaking, he'd kind of taken the guttural emotion out of what needed to be there. And, you know, this song is different than all the other songs we tracked on the record. It was the only song that we built from the ground up. Every other track we'd started with a full band tracking and him singing a vocal. And when Jack was talking to me initially about the song, he had this demo. This is the most produced demo of any of the songs. The rest are voice memos. So when I got sent this, I'm like, oh boy, okay. So he challenged me that, hey, it needs to be this demo. There's parts of this that, you know, he was married to, right? That comes back to the voice memo thing I mentioned earlier. Is, you know, sometimes you really do get married to stuff, and in this case, it was good.
Yeah, but I was ruthless, Juz. Like,
yeah,
yeah, go on.
He was definitely knew the direction it had to go, right? And what could have easily happened with that song is it could have gotten too slick. We could have tracked it all at once and really missed the nuance of that track. There's a lot of odd stuff in that track that really makes it work. Well, he built it all himself, so the only thing I knew to do was to construct it the same way that he originally constructed, and that was one piece at a time. And so as we started with that direction and built it from there, we were able to never overshoot the tune and take it too far somewhere. We were able to only add as it needed, and he knew what vocal parts would need to be there, and then we added different stuff, you know, the banjo and the trash can and you know, the bass part and things that are there. But for the most part, we really worked heavily off of that demo.
Yeah, I felt strong. Sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Go ahead, Jack.
No, I was going to say I felt strongly that the demo was, you know, people really liked it, but I would never have. I felt that it needed to be properly recorded for sure. And I was, but I felt the demo offered a couple of very significant hints, and the two hints that I felt was I thought the harmonies, the harmonies the whole way through the song were a big hint. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that turns out to, I didn't realise at the time, but which Justin picked up on, I think playing those chords the way that it was written lends to the time signature, because of the transition of the sort of hacking up from the seventh, that sort of added to it as well. But definitely the big hint for me was the harmonies the whole way through, and the desperation in those harmony parts. There was a few things, but I felt that the demo offered a few really good hints, and I think we kept them. And things like the banjo just added so much to that song, and Jimmy's track and the bottom end. Chris, come on.
Yeah, and Justin kind of glossed over a pretty interesting point where this particular song was approached completely differently in the studio, and we even scheduled it around to do it like that. We built this whole intro from the ground up. You know what I mean? So even that aspect, we changed the recording format, we changed the approach for the song on the record. And I think that's really fascinating because a lot of artists are interfacing with producers that say, well, here's how I make records. Let's take your music and fit it into that box.
Yeah.
And I don't get the vibe of that at all. And quite honestly, wouldn't really want to be involved if that was the case, So this whole process for those people watching changed song to song, based on what the song needed, which I think is awesome. What were you going to say, Jack?
Oh, I was just going to say that Justin, was respectful of the process for me. I felt that he picked up on that, and it was always collaborative. But it was just great to have somebody on the same page driving the bus, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all keeping each other honest too, which is fun. Let's listen to a little bit of this Chit Chatter song we talked about, the demo, and then the production one. And the production one, I think, really showcases the vocal sound we've been talking about. And it's a stinking cool song. I really like it. And it's been a while since I heard the demo, so it'd be kind of fun to listen to this. And hopefully Justin and Jack can hear it. But I'll mute you guys real quick, and we'll listen to a little bit of this.
Love is a mountain, flowers and stone. Hold hands, don't climb alone. Love is an ocean, strange, opaque. You push, you pull, and you take. No matter, it's chit-chatter to me.
Okay, so that was the voice memo. Pretty chill, right? And yeah, very chill. And then let me find, I got to scroll through to play things, so give me a second. Here we go. So here's the record we did. And we worked a lot on this vocal sound and kind of talked a lot about the mics to use and how to get those to the amps we wanted to use. And it was not a one and done thing. It was a lot of fun. So let's listen to this. This is fun.
There's a mountain, flowers and stone. Hold hands, don't climb alone. And love is an ocean, strange, opaque. You push, you pull, and you take. No matter, it's chit-chatter to me.
Yeah, it's fun. It's real cool, and it's important to note that that vocal sound that you're hearing is what Jack was hearing in his headphones when he sang, and that was something that we talked about from the get-go. We didn't really want to have a lot of post-production stuff because Justin and Jack were really keen on this too. The more we're hearing the record, the players are hearing the record in their headphones, the more they're going to react to that. And I'm a firm believer too that Jack was singing that differently when he was hearing that in his headphones, like leaning into that sound. You know, Travis has a question. Awesome, Jack. Do you play guitar on all the tracks? And Justin, as a producer, do you encourage the artist to do this? Great question.
Jack,
So,
Yeah, I did. I played guitar on. Yeah, I did. I played guitar on all the tracks for sure. In fact, a lot of the guitar I played track live, right?
yeah.
Yeah. And that was another great thing about all the sessions. It was really organic. A lot of us were all in the same room. But yeah, I played acoustic guitar on all tracks. I was a couple of the songs were written on a steel guitar, but my parts on those songs ended up being tracked on acoustic, and I played there's a little electric part on Gabriel that I played as well.
mm-hmm.
But yeah,
and you sang back a lot, like you and Justin teamed up on a mic together on, I think, Gabriel, right?
Yeah, we did that on a lot of the songs. I think I like that. That's an old technique that you used to do when they didn't have as many tracks available.
yeah.
But I always like to encourage the artist to answer the first question, to play guitar on their records, if they have the ability. I'm not of the mindset that step to the side and let a real pro do it or whatever. That kind of attitude, you miss the good stuff. Because an artist knows, like in Jack's case, he's a great guitar player. He plays really well and he has sculpted parts. So when he sat down, he had his stuff worked out. He knew that. But if even somebody that doesn't have it as well worked out, you're going to get more interesting stuff if you're willing to go down, to listen to what the artist has. As far as a guitar player, as far as what they might play or piano, you might get a much more original part because they've spent so much time and so much energy and emotion in that song. They're going to probably play something more appropriate to the vocal they're going to sing. So if it comes to a point where it's just not working or they're not comfortable, then that's another, you jump to something else or somebody else can play something different. But for the most part, like this record it should be able to be heard as Jack and his guitar. Everything else added to. That's not going to be the case for every record. If an artist is not a player, then we have to build the foundation. I would have to maybe take on that role, and I would have to find that emotion to play underneath the singer and to capture where they're trying to go tonally. And it's hard to talk about. Like you said, it's like dancing about architecture. But for the most part, yes, always want to have the artist play if they can. If they can keep it in time and in tune, that's super important. Jack was above and beyond phenomenal guitar player, so that was easy, no brainer.
Yeah, and I remember I have a memory of this track in this song. You had scheduled the keyboard player to be there while we tracked it, and I remember moving the tempo around a little bit based on that whirly lick. You know what I mean? Like to make sure that sounded like we wanted to sound. If that's an accurate memory or not, but just a little bit on the tempo to make sure everything fit, and that's another benefit of having everyone there together. To kind of really get that feel.
Well,
because that tempo is drastically different than the demo.
That song was actually, we started tracking it and it was sounding a lot different, and we were not getting. It was definitely living in a much more somber state. And Chris Autry, the bass player, I'd gone over to him. I was like, "Hey, man, what do you think? Where could this go?" And he's sitting there with his bass, and he really brought in a different color, going to the flat 7, going to the more bluesy side of a bass riff, and came up with that bass riff. And that right then, boom, it was like, let's hit record and let's go. And that, what you're hearing on that track is that song recorded the first time. That was
Oh, I
take
forgot.
one. Yeah, of once
A lot
we
of them.
once we got into that groove, it went right down. That's Jack's vocal. He has one vocal on that song, so that is essentially about as live a track as you can get on a record. We didn't overdub. That's every guitar, everything that's on that thing. The only thing that we added was Jimmy went back in and added a couple extra drum things on top of what he had played already, just to add. No, and then we added maybe some synth, some Juno bass and stuff that we put on a lot of things. So
Yeah, can I say too? That's a good point, and I think that when Justin and I were having the conversations before we met face to face, and this is probably something to do with how old I am now, but I said to Justin, we were talking about players, and I said they've got to be good guys first, and obviously you want great players, and I'd researched some of the names you've mentioned, but it's important that they're good guys first, and Justin said, "Oh man, I wouldn't." That was his philosophy too. He'd been around too long in Nashville to think any other way. And when I came over there, all the guys, and it's really important. It's a really important point. All the guys dialed in and added something. And I really feel with Chit Chatter that it was, as you probably, Justin and I didn't hear the voice memo, but it's somber's a good word for it. It was just a reference of a little finger picker. And when we got into the studio, it's a good point because I sent an email saying thank you to Chris because my recollection of that song was he really picked it up.
Oh yeah,
that bass line really picked that song up, and it felt right. And as Justin said, everybody followed. And Jimmy had the same effect on other tracks. Gabrielle on the Trash Can. There was a number of things that I can think back to, and not to mention the electric guitar, your electric guitar and banjo, Justin. But from the artist's point of view, the team that was assembled was really important, and I was thrilled because everybody contributed. So in a certain sense, there was production ideas from them as well that really helped the record, and Dave Spires too, who we didn't meet in person. Yeah. But, Dave put some great parts down as well. But
the guitarist. Yeah,
I mean that's what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing on the record, and Phil Towns on the keys. It is a collaboration. I feel really blessed that I work with some really hot players, but really great guys, and all different, but great guys, including you, Chris. And the sessions for me, there wasn't any stress, no stress, and that for me, I'd never had that experience. The whole thing.
Good for you.
Great. Yeah. Like there wasn't, like in terms of personalities.
Oh yeah.
The whole thing was for me. It was fantastic. So and I was really lucky that Justin was able to assemble those guys, and the relationship with Justin was strong, and then everything from there was strong. And your input, Chris, was incredible.
Well, thanks.
And your hard work.
So Claudia wants to know, did any track surprise you, good or bad, in this process?
Do you want to answer that first, Charles?
Yeah, I'll have to say there's a track on the record, A Fool Would Follow. There's two tracks that surprised me. A Fool Would Follow Me is a track that was kind of the cornerstone of the project. And I thought this is going to be the easiest slam dunk to get because we really knew what we wanted. That did not happen that way. It was the most frustrating track, and we worked and slaved. I mean, I even brought that thing home and worked in my studio on it some. And eventually we pulled it back to what we had initially tracked. But we worked really hard on that song because we were thinking, no, this is probably my gut was telling me it was going to go down really quick, and it didn't, right? So it surprised me in a bad way at first. but then ended it in a great way. Now I'm really proud of the track, and that we stuck to the initial vision. Sometimes, you get into this, there's so many songs floating by, and you're trying to keep it all in perspective, and how does this all play together, that you do lose perspective right in the middle of it. And maybe I'd lost some perspective on that song, so I'm working so hard to get it. We needed to step back, and we did. And when we stepped back and we allowed some stuff in the mix to come in and let it really play as it needed to originally play, that was one where we started. Maybe I started asking you, Chris, to engineer it more than it needed. And, everybody, when you're making a record, it's a creative process, and you're trying to get the best out of every song, right? And sometimes messing too much with it just squashes the hell out of it. And that's what I felt like as a producer, that I was hitting that wall. And then we had to make that call. Let's pull back. Let's go back to the drum sound that we know that works for this record. Let's go back to the guitar sound that we know that works for this record. And let's not change that. And let's just let the song be more of what it really is. Don't try to put too many tricks into it. And when we did, the track came out perfectly. Another song, I think, that surprised us all, there's a song titled Sweet Sunsets Over Sydney. And Jack had sent me some songs that he didn't have necessarily fully developed. He was writing songs to get them ready to, there's my neighbor, writing them to get them, try to get enough material for the record. He had the cornerstones, but he was like, I don't know, Jack, maybe 4 or 5 songs you didn't have quite there, or, so he started writing these songs in this 5-week period, 6 weeks, whatever it was. And every song that he sent me from the rushed, I need to have material for my record period, I loved. And he's like, I'm not so sure about these songs. And I spent a lot of time, and I'm going, oh man, this song is killing me. I love it. So he thought it was funny that the songs that I really was pumped about were songs that he was just like, I don't know, in case we need an extra, if we don't have enough. And those are the ones that were hitting me. And Sweet Sunsets Over Sydney, obviously we don't, you can hear it when the record comes out. It was a more of a orchestral put together song, with a lot of texture that Phil Towns did an amazing job playing mellotrons and theremins. I don't know, whatever. He had so much fun. It's super great. So that was a big surprise, I think, for all of us in the end to hear that one done. Like, wow, this is it was a real musical statement from a really beautiful, simple but beautiful song, I thought. Those are my 2 surprises.
Cool. Jack, did any song surprise you, good or bad?
Good question. Justin mentioned A Fool Would Follow Me. When I was on the plane to Nashville, I felt I had the song. I've had my bag full of songs, and that was the track that I was going to hang the record on, so to speak. And I've had the experience before where it just doesn't seem to come together like you expected. And I won't repeat what Justin said, other than to say that that's exactly what the experience was like for me as well. Probably the big surprise is Chit Chatter. When I hear that song, I just into the minor and the bass part and the band track. I'm really thrilled by that. But I'm also thrilled by the songs that have basically come out the way I was hoping they would. So there's a number of songs. There's 3 or 4 songs in the record that I had real vision for, but Justin picked up on that, and we came up with exactly what we were after. And I think, like for me, about 4 years ago, I went away and started fingerpicking. And being an old acoustic guitar player, mainly just a strummer. And I didn't realise how much work was involved in fingerpicking and getting it down pat. And so this record, I feel a lot of those songs where I'm fingerpicking, the songs with tension and the songs that I had a lot of ideas about. It's a testament to my practice, because the fingerpicking is so much better. And that's one thing that's been a real surprise to me as an artist, as a songwriter, has been putting the plectrum down and 90% of the time now just using my fingers. And I think those songs came up great. And Restitution song for me, I love the last song on the record. Um, Faster Than the Speed of Change, those kind of tracks, which are in the same vein. But the big surprise out of all of them would be probably Chit Chatter, I'd say.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite tracks too. I've got one more question. I've got some questions for you after this one. Chris wants to know where does the inspiration of the naming of your songs come from? Where do you get the inspiration for naming your songs? Where does that come from, Jack?
Well, as I said before, I fiddle around a lot and always have my, like any good, I suppose everybody's got their iPhone with them nowadays. I've always got my phone with me, and I might be sitting on the couch on Saturday night, or I might be sitting in my underpants before I get in the shower at 7 o'clock in the morning playing a guitar. And occasionally I'll impress myself and record it. And often it's like, for example, Justin mentioned the Sweet Sunsets Over Sydney. There's a line in the last verse, it's ding a dang dong, my love, I was young, I was wrong. And everybody in the studio loved that line, ding a dang dong. But and I kept that because that was just the idea I came up with on the voice message to fill in the melody, ding a dang dong, my love, I was young, I was wrong. And so quite often the voice memo will be the idea, and the melody that I record to hint towards what vocal I'm looking for will have a word or an idea in it, and from there I build a song. And it's usually just the oversensitive artist writing about something he's thinking about at the time, normally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So I'll ask you the same question, Jack. Do you have any advice for people in your situation as far as, because you have quite a bit of recording experience and now a lot of experience working as a producer, just any kind of advice you could give somebody about to embark on this journey?
There's a number of ways you can record now. But for me, I always do the basic sum backwards, and you can record records at home. I'm big on sound and great sounding records, and this is going to be a long-winded answer to your question. But when I first heard the studio name Welcome to 1979, straight away I knew what that meant, because I thought of albums like Minute by Minute by the Doobie Brothers, some of those early Blondie records that sound so sonically fantastic. And I don't want to cruel the opportunity to record something great sounding for a portion of money. So you can save some money and record something that sounds good, or you can spend a little bit more and take a bit more of a risk and go for it and record to tape. And in my opinion, this record sonically sounds fantastic. So I look at it the other way around. I think I'd rather spend a bit more and have this for the rest of my life and hang my hat on it. And so that's a big thing for me, the sound and the studio, and the fact that we did get to record this to tape. If you're in a position where you can do that, and I get it, a lot of artists aren't. I'm a bit older, so and it's the only thing I really want to do with the rest of my life. So I don't play golf, I don't like European cars, I don't spend money on anything really except guitars and music. So this is my passion and I want to do it well. So that would be one thing I'd say. And equally as important is work with people that you feel really comfortable with. And it was a stepping stone all the way back from the first conversation I had with Travis to speaking to Justin, to meeting Chris, and also the guys, as I mentioned before, the players that became involved. Everything felt really comfortable. So to the point where I don't walk away with a great record. Oh, well, I do. I walk away with a great record, but I also walk away with some new friends, and I'll do it again. And at my stage in life, that's what I'm after. I want to create and meet people and make associations. And you guys were really dedicated. Like there was no looking at the watch, time to go. Like there was a job to do, and I really felt well looked after by you both. And that's that's the honest. I wouldn't say it any other way. I felt like there was dedication from the engineer and the studio owner and Justin to get it right all the way through, and I really appreciated it. So to work, to this day, I really appreciate that, and to the point where I'd like to do it again. And that was a great experience to have that dedication from you guys, and the investment in the songs from you two and the guys who came on board and played with us.
Well, thanks, Jack. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Justin, do you have any advice to artists that are planning on going on this journey?
Yeah, sure. I don't know how good my advice is, but I think probably one of the most important things is if you're going to work with somebody in a recording environment, any environment as a young artist too, you need to be working with people that are as dedicated as you are to what you're doing. I feel like that gets your best results. People that really care about what they do, when they team up with you, will care about what you do because they want to do a great job, representing themselves, and that in turn represents you well. That's how I can do what I do. That's how I can produce a record like Jack's. Is I know that Chris Morrow is a phenomenal engineer, and studio owner, and I know that you care about your name and you care about your craft and what you do. You're not going to blow something off, and because maybe you're not interested. I know that when you took this job, you wanted to do it. You were interested. We talked about that, and that was every musician involved. Quality comes from dedication and putting your heart and your soul into something. And if it's an artistic endeavor, that needs to be there. So yeah, not everybody has the ability to go into a big studio and record on analog tape with a big band and make a record for 2 weeks. Not everybody's in that position, but that does not mean that you cannot make great records. You can do that on the smallest of things, as long as the heart and the dedication is there. I think we got to do something that was really special because Jack had a vision and he had the ability to back up his vision with what he wanted to do recorded wise. He wanted to go into a studio. We wanted to cut this on tape. I don't recommend that everybody just jumps into a tape environment if they've never worked on it before. You came out of the digital realm and you get on a tape machine, it might put you in a very uncomfortable position. You need to have people that are around you that have worked in it as well, and Chris is an expert in that form of recording. I've recorded that, way many times. Jack had done it in the past. And the guys that played on this record did as well. So we were comfortable in that environment too. Not to say that if you've never worked on tape, you shouldn't. Just saying, like, you need to understand what you're walking into. But as a young artist and you're wanting to get your material down and you want to release it, make sure that the people that are around you are positive people. That's probably the most important thing that you're going to find. You might have the most talented person next to you, but they are a cavern of woe and negativity. That will always reveal itself in the music when it's recorded, especially. A lot of people, go, well, we'll get the most talented people we possibly can, or let's say the biggest names we can. Yeah. Be the person that is the best in your environment, in your town, or where you live, or in a music town, and go, that's who we need to have. That's not always the right case. That's not always the right choice. You need to make sure that the people that are involved really want to be there and really do care about your music and care about how they are represented as much as you. And then you get the best results.
That's great advice. We got a question from Laura for Jack. What would be advice on a young artist writing his own songs?
Or her? Well, what would I say?
It's a tough question.
For me, I suppose the way I got into it was as a teenager, listening back to Pink Floyd and David Bowie and realising that that wasn't some musical genius. That was somebody that started with a D chord. And that opened a door for me, a big door for me as a kid, that I walked through thinking, well, if something which I thought was just a work of genius, like some of those bands I mentioned, can do it with a D chord and an E minor and a G, I can too. And I'd probably recommend to stick to, don't get too tricky. Chit Chat is a great example. That's a 2-chord song with a minor change. You don't need to be a musical genius to write songs, and stick at it if you can. It's getting more and more difficult, but if you can, in Australia anyway, it's getting more and more difficult. In Sydney, if you can get out and get in front of people and collaborate, definitely do that. But keep it simple and stick at it. And don't limit yourself to thinking you've got to be any particular type of guitar player. Develop, or piano player, or whatever your instrument is. Just develop your own sound, and you only need one note. Like a lot of people that are listening may not know that songs like Blinded by the Light is basically chopsticks. So there's no rules. There's no rules. That's the other thing. But definitely stick at it.
That's awesome. Yeah, basically just get started. What's Randy? Just wanted to give a shout out. Well, cool. Well, this is good timing for your record. Why don't you tell us, Jack, where people can find this record, when it's going to come out, and how they can learn more about what you do. That's the same with Justin, and we'll wrap it up.
So, well, Jack Nolan Music on Facebook, Jack Nolan Music on Instagram, Jack Nolan Music on I'm on all the platforms, Spotify, Apple Music, etc., etc. This record will be starting to be released in your fall, our spring. So I release every 4 to 6 weeks. I release a new track. Have been doing that for about a year now. So the idea with artists more and more now is just to keep content up. So if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you'll be notified every 4 to 6 weeks of the next track I'm releasing. I still have a couple of singles to go from my last record. And then in your fall, so I'd say around July, I'm hoping to launch the first single of this record.
Sweet.
I'd love you to keep in touch and follow and listen and support.
Cool. Justin, how do people find out about you? How do they get in contact if they have questions for you?
Yeah, well, you can always email me at justinmichaelweaver@yahoo.com, or I'm on Instagram at notweaver, NOT Weaver. You can reach me through Instagram. I'm not the most socially accessible. I don't have Facebook. I'm on my wife's Facebook account here, but I am on Instagram. I'm pretty active on there, but yeah, you can email me. You can reach out. Anything I'm doing is typically comes out through my Instagram account. You can find out. I keep people up to date. Tracks of the other folks I'm producing and stuff that's coming out or whatever. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for your time, guys. And if you forgot their email addresses or whatever, you can just email or message me through this Facebook page, and I'll leave you guys in with them.
And Chris, yeah. Thank you. Great initiative.
Yeah, thank
you.
Great
initiative.
Yeah, questions.
This lockdown's pretty weird, but it's a great initiative, and yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. It was great seeing you, Jack. Justin, I'll see you around the neighborhood.
Around the
hood.
All right,
everyone. All right. Bye.
Bye.